Welcome to How Art is Born, a podcast from the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver about the origins of artists and their creative and artistic practices. I'm your host, R. Allen Brooks, artist, writer, and professor. Today I'm joined by Houston-based visual artist and educator, Kaneem Smith. Say hello.
Hello.
So to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is Kaneem Smith. I am, I call myself like a mixed media visual artist, meaning I work in multiple, I work with a multitude of different materials. I guess for years I called myself just a sculptor, but then I started diving into other areas of my artistic practice, and so that's why now I'm saying mixed media. Not necessarily multimedia with technology per se, but different materials and ways of working, ways of being creative.
Okay, so one of my first sort of significant connections with Black sculpture was Thomas Blackshear. Yeah, and so that really kind of stood out to me a lot, of because I would just see him all the time, and I was like, these are dope, Because it sounded like you started with sculpture and then moved into mixed media.
Yeah, I think, I guess what I mean by that is I was primarily just working three-dimensionally with materials such as wax and clay and wood, and even like working with, doing a little bit of metalworking, but just, it was always three-dimensionally, because now I'm doing things that are more wall-based, or even if they're suspended works that maybe they're not attached to the wall, they're flatter. They're not necessarily. They're more relief-based. I should say they're more of a relief piece. They're more dimensional. They pop out from a flat surface, but they're not necessarily can be seen from all sides.
Yeah.
Can be appreciated from all sides. If that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So let's rewind, get deep into like what this stuff means to you. So I often start by asking people, what was the first time that you remember art having a substantial effect on you, or meaning, or anything like that?
Wow.
For some people, it's so ingrained in their lives that they can't identify it first time. Has it like always been with you, or do you have like a moment?
I'm going to say it's always been with me. My father, he's well retired now, but he is a sculptor. He's an artist himself, and he's definitely a great influence on, I guess the path I took in life. But I guess what I'm saying is that when I say that it's ingrained in me. I've been. I think I was like 6 or 7 years. Actually, we moved to Texas when I was 7.
Okay.
So I started taking art classes at this at what's called the Glassell School of Art. That's affiliated with the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. They have classes for children and adults. And I started. My father put my brother and I in some ceramic classes, some classes where we could, classes for children, basically working with different materials.
Around how
and I was around 7, 8 years old. Okay. And and it wasn't like I knew that's what I wanted to do right then and there, but I knew I felt like that was a way to express myself, because I was pretty, I was more, I'm definitely more of a shy, or should I say more introspective person. And I think being creative or doing creative things or making things with my hands really helped me sort of open up. Made me it helped me become more social and more and a bit more confident just going out into the world. Growing up, even though I had all kinds of things happen to me when I was growing up, but I felt like that was something that I had, because coming from having been born in Buffalo, New York, moving to Houston, Texas as a child, like I said, I was around 7, 8 years old, being teased because you sound white or you sound different.
You definitely
and I
sound,
didn't understand that.
You definitely didn't sound Texan.
Right, right. So coming out of that, like I wasn't black enough, I wasn't this enough, I was. So so coming into that and growing up with that and trying to find my way.
Yeah.
Being creative was like my outlet, was like my safe space. You know?
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Well, so before we start recording, we talked about you being born in Buffalo, me being born in Ithaca, New York.
Yes, yeah.
And the way things happened for me is my parents moved down to Asheville, North Carolina, like when I was 1.
Wow.
But we moved to Atlanta when I was 8, which is where my mother grew up. So like all her family's there. And so there was some of that same stuff, you know, like you don't talk like us, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that when you go to, I mean, this is purely my opinion, purely my perspective, my experience. The East, upstate New York, quote unquote, a lot of people sound like me, you know, and a lot of people of color, people such as myself. I felt like it felt normal. I felt like I could hear myself speaking in other people. So I didn't understand what was wrong with the way I was speaking. So, but anyway.
Just when you show up different, you know?
But yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I don't know, like, so you spent your teenage years definitely in Texas.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I found rapping and stuff like that. Like, you know, the more I was there, like, either some of my accent became a little more like that, but that certainly just felt like the way people talked, even if I ain't talk like that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so we finna get this thing going, like that kind of thing.
Oh, my goodness, yes. Yes. That's interesting. And I have the pleasure of being here in Denver today in relation to the Dirty South exhibition. And I have to say that I'm honored to be part of the show. And although my dialect or my background with my parents, my parental background was definitely Southern. South Carolina, my father's side, like I've got to say South Carolina, Barbados, Virginia. And then my mother, North Carolina. So the South is in me.
Right.
But my dad got a job teaching at the University of Buffalo. And
right.
So, yeah.
That's the thing, right? It's in your soul, you know. So
I
like
was born out there,
right? You know, like we don't have to rock a grill. You know what I mean? Like it's with you. It's part of who you are.
Thank you. Yes, agreed. Yeah.
Okay, so you were making art at 7.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it making art, but I was making things, and I don't think my parents held on to but they held on a lot of my drawings and things that I did when I was much younger, when I was around age, a little older. But I don't know if I was calling it art, but I definitely loved what I was doing. I was enamored by it. I was definitely enamored by what my father was doing, working, you know, completely different. He worked in welded steel.
Yeah.
When he draws, he works with oil stick. Or graphite or charcoal, and he's much more abstract. But like my father, definitely an artist for sure. He was making artwork, and me, I don't consider what I was doing playing, but I was definitely. I don't know what. I don't know how to express
well, you described
that.
it, though. You described it as an escape.
Definitely
from,
an escape.
Like the rejection of people, you know, saying
goodness.
You weren't black enough or whatever.
Yes.
So you found some, like, solace, some healing in it.
Absolutely. And because I, being a child that was bullied to some extent as a young person, one of the things that sort of saved me was that the drawings I would make for people, instead of, hopefully not being bullied or beat up that time, I was able to make, this, well, draw me something or make me something. And that would be my way of getting out of that.
Right.
Out of, being,
That was your currency.
Right, exactly. Getting out of that situation or
getting
excused from being taunted that day.
Well, so it seems early on that art for you was cathartic, right? It was something healing for you.
Absolutely.
is it still that for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like in all these conversations with artists, I talk about how some people do art to heal themselves, some people do art to heal the world, some people do it for both. How is it for you? Like, is it still mostly for you, or are you trying to say something to the world with the art that you create?
It's most definitely for me, but it's not selfishly for me. It's not selfishly for me, but it's so I'm going to say heal. I would love that if my work healed the world. If what I was doing or what I was putting out there was very healing. And it is. I notice that I get moved when people are moved by the things that I've made or things I present in an exhibition or a gallery or in a project. So I'm not just making it for myself, but I'm making it representing myself and also representing who I am as a Black American, as a woman. I like the term, and this is, call me old school, but I like the term I've been hearing lately called FBA, Foundational Black American. I love that. So I would like to adopt that for myself.
Right on.
As I can imagine, you and other people, because we're definitely Black people, but we're a mixture of so many things.
Yeah.
And all of that's innocent. But I make my work for myself, but I also, but more importantly, I make it for to connect with people, to connect with people, but also, I guess, to invite people to. I want people to be drawn or invited to, or feel invited to what I'm presenting, and relate to it in some way. It's like something that I'm sharing. I'm sharing myself with the audience or with whomever.
I love that.
I'm seeing the work. Yeah.
Okay. That was such a good answer. Seriously. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so, there's so much about the journey of art, right? Okay. So when you said that when you were sort of creating things at a young age, you weren't calling it art yet. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to be a quote-unquote artist?
Maybe it's cliche to say this, but like for me, definitely high school.
Okay.
I was, I tell myself even to this day, I felt lucky enough to have been part of, being an alum of an amazing school, the Houston High School for Performing and Visual Arts, HSPVA.
Okay.
The Performing Arts High School in Houston, Texas, and because I thought what I was doing was pretty badass, but until I got there, I saw everyone else around me was badass. So I felt like, okay, it humbled me, but I definitely felt more accepted. But I'm not looking to be accepted to assimilate.
Yeah.
To wanting to be someone else or doing something else, but I definitely felt like what I was doing was legitimate, and people liked it enough where it was something that I felt like I could do and do well.
Okay. So being in that community with other artists, that was kind of that transformation for you, where you were like,
and having teachers that. Not all of them, but most of them encouraging. The visual arts teachers that I had, told, not that they didn't just, and they didn't even necessarily tell me I had talent, but they liked what I was doing creatively. They liked my ideas. They encouraged me to continue to build on those ideas.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I laugh when you said not all of them, because my art teachers used to shit on the fact that I like comic books like all the time. Oh my
gosh. I rarely made an A in my art classes. And I was really troubled by that, but years later, as an adult, I came to realize that was probably one of the best parts of my education, because you're getting a B or a C, on a project just made me work harder towards getting that A. It made me work harder because if you're just giving someone high marks or high praise on something they've created, they're gonna it would kind of level me out and feel like, okay, this is all I need to do. I don't have to work towards getting better or developing my skills any further than this.
Were you working mostly with clay in high school, or was it like drawing, sculpture, painting?
I was doing mostly sculpture, but in high school we also had painting classes, design, drawing, obviously.
Yeah.
I guess the last 2 years, even the last year of high school, was where we were able to really focus in or hone in on one or two things.
Okay.
And for me, it was definitely working three-dimensionally. And my artistic practice now was definitely not what I was doing in high school. I really didn't start working with fiber the way that I work with it now, or fiber-based media, until I got to college.
Okay. So back then, in the high school classes where you focused on three-dimensional, was it were you doing abstract sculpture or like literal?
That's an excellent question. Thankfully, because of my parents holding on to some of the things I did in high school, I was very figurative. I was I was looking at not just West African figurative based and slightly abstract, but representational figurative art.
Yeah.
I was also looking at Italian Renaissance figurative art, like Michelangelo, and so basically the human body, the human figure, was very appealing to me at the time. But once I got to college, I don't know, not that I went far left from it, but I just kind of evolved from working representationally and just got a little more, it became more about material in place of something representational that represents a person or a thing.
See, this is interesting to me because, so anybody who's listening can Google your work and kind of see examples of things you've done.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in what it meant to you, like to move from representational sculpture to a little more abstract stuff. Like, what did the art mean to you in the creation of it? Were you trying to communicate something, or was it just what it felt right to you, or?
It felt right to me. It was something that I was interested in, and definitely what I was studying, what I was looking at, what I was reading. I spent a lot of time in the libraries, particularly in the art section of the library.
Okay.
But looking at art books, primarily like Western, more abstract works. I was looking at artists whose works were figurative, but weren't necessarily realistic or representational. It was like I could represent the body, represent the idea of the body or a person without it having to look like a person.
Yeah. And
therefore I was able to connect with people who weren't necessarily, Black like myself, people of other backgrounds, because it was something that, I don't know why, but for some reason that always resonated with me, to be able to connect or have the work to connect with people who are of other ethnicities and other backgrounds and draw from it their own experiences. I don't know, that always appealed to me. And I felt like when I got to college, I felt more comfortable doing that. And I discovered, like, my first day of art class, freshman year, I was taking sculpture. I was very excited to take sculpture. I don't want to say I had a teacher who was an amazing artist, but wasn't necessarily an amazing teacher. But like many artists, and I can even relate to this, having taught myself over the years, he himself is an amazing artist, but I think it was more of a job for him rather than something he was passionate about.
Right.
So our first assignment was to grab something in the room and make something with it. You know,
That's
and
cool.
there was like a bag of plaster here. There was some bags of clay. There was some wood, just random wood blocks and shapes people could work with. There was what else? There was what else did we have? I want to say, wire. Wire was a big deal. I was thinking about something metal. So malleable wire. There were things that we could do to manipulate.
Right.
But and I looked over and I saw what I was drawn to was a roll of burlap in the corner of the classroom.
Okay.
And I know it sounds random, but I just unraveled it and started cutting it up. And just, gluing it back together or twisting it, tying, and just seeing what I could do with it, breaking it apart, having it unravel. And I just started really falling in love with it. But burlap, burlap is something I use quite a bit in my work, my artistic practice now, but it is not an easy material to work with, and it sheds.
Right.
But it's organic. It's connected to the earth. I love the way it smelled. Also, it had a story behind it. It had a history behind it. Particularly, and especially the burlap that I work with now, because I like working with reclaimed coffee bags and potato sacks and things that were handmade.
Right.
And to come from different parts of the world. And it just felt like all of it just opened up a great deal for me. But getting back to being a freshman in that classroom,
Right.
I started making shapes, just simple shapes, like canoe shapes, and stitching those things, like crudely stitching those things together. Because at that time, I was just playing. I really wasn't. I knew that it was an assignment. We knew it was an assignment where we were going to be graded on it. It was something introductory. We weren't, it wasn't going to be. We're going to be critiqued in such a way where it had to be perfect or it had to be, one thing or another. It was like the beginning of the class to get us comfortable with the idea of working, experimenting with materials. But it's just something I fell in love with. I think that high school and then undergraduate years of college is when I felt like this is what I this is what I really want to do. Now, my father, who's an artist himself, he super supportive, but at the same time, he was very frank with me that, he says, well, is you sure this is what you want to do? Being a woman, being a black woman, it's not going to be easy for you.
Right.
Are you sure this is what you want to do? And I don't know why I still carry that now, but that just resonated with me. He was really right about that. It ain't easy. It wasn't.
It's
but
not. Yeah.
But I was, I can imagine, you're being a creative artist and musician. There's something inside. You're just passionate. You're just in love. I mean, what can you do?
Right.
It's part of you.
Yeah. It's a whole
And
journey.
I knew it was going to be
Yeah.
a struggle, and it has been. It hasn't been. Yeah, it's definitely had its struggles for sure.
That's the thing. I figured out, like, my parents were both very supportive of me being creative, but I think they also had a lot of fear around it because it made me stand out.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a lot of struggle with that for myself in my 20s and teens. But in more recent years, I come to understand that they grew up. They were both born within a few years of Emmett Till being lynched.
Wow.
So they grew up in a reality of if you stood out as a black boy or as a black person,
Wow.
you could be murdered. And so I think it was reasonable for them to be fearful about me standing out as an artist, even though it wasn't reasonable for my reality and how I was growing up.
Right.
Based on what they had grown up in, that was a
Right.
reasonable fear.
Wow.
And it's not to say that, like, all of that danger is completely gone, but things have just shifted in a different kind of way, right?
Right.
And so when I look at our struggles about how long my hair was or how I dressed or things like that. When I look at that through that lens, I have a lot more compassionate view of it, you know?
Wow. No, that's powerful. I can relate to that for sure. What I mean by that is I can relate to that you have a much more passionate view about it.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel as well. From my experience, for sure. But that's powerful. And you know what? That's interesting. You said that. Yeah, I can imagine a parent being fearful. You know, you want your children to be successful and safe, and and you want them to have the things you didn't have, and for life to be easy and great for them, and not to struggle. But the Emmett Till, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. You know, you think about like. I love being Black. I feel like it's such an honor, right? It's a wonderful thing. But it's not my first thought about everything every day, right? Like I'm not waking up and being like, let me have my Black day, right? So if what's compelling me inwardly is like my desire to create, my desire to make something beautiful or create something that comments on the world or whatever it is that pushes me forward, like that's not, that comes from inside. It's not attached to oppression, racism, the structure of society. But then when you decide to live a life that's led by those things, it's affected by those outside things.
Absolutely. And it was for me as well in ways I never could have imagined. And also, as I can imagine, a lot of people relate to parents telling you, how are you going to make a living? How are you going to support yourself? Doing that.
I mean, that's a real thing too. And also, there's a way that art and commerce, particularly in this country, seem to be so sort of inextricably bound. Like, if your art is not making a lot of money, it doesn't have value, which I don't think is true. I think art has value just for itself, and then business is a separate thing.
Yeah.
Creating art's one thing, selling it is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And you have to decide whether you want to sell it, whether you want to make a living off of it. And that's business. That's not the value of the art. But generally speaking, like if you tell somebody, hey, I'm going to go work on my art, they treat it like you're playing, like you're not serious.
Oh, yeah.
But if you say, hey, I'm going to go do my taxes, they leave you alone.
There you go. It's like people asking you what you do. You tell them you're an artist. They go, well, what do you really do?
Right.
What do you really do? That's a hobby. That's not a job.
Right.
Yeah. It's not a profession. I mean,
It's such an interesting thing. It is. And so, like, in order to be an artist, and especially a Black artist, you have to be internally validated, essentially.
Wow.
And push forward with the vision of what you believe. And sometimes it's to your detriment, Yes. And then sometimes there's successes, But I think if you're evaluating honestly for yourself, even if there is a detriment, this is the life I wanted to lead.
Yes.
Then there's a lot more peace for it,
Oh, absolutely. Doesn't it feel gratifying when something is successful on your terms?
Yes.
You feel great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the times when I was younger and gave in to great pressure to conform and try to be in those other worlds that were not on my terms, I wasn't good at it. I feel like I would just have what I thought was a normal conversation with somebody, and they would walk away and be like, he is so controversial. Like that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'd be like, what did I say? But I think it's just and so I grew up in Southern church. So that's like doubly confining, right? Because Southern is already confining. And then
it is.
And so Southern Black church, right? And so so that's like the double whammy. So like me just expressing a simple idea in that world. Like I remember I worked. Okay, so my first job so I grew up in this church. When I joined it was like 30 people.
And this was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I joined it was like 30 people, and when I by the time I got back from college, it was like 20,000.
Wow.
And they hired me to produce their TV broadcast. This is a Creflo Dollar. I don't know if you've heard.
Oh my God, that church.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so I was working there in my 20s, And I had a boss who had a whole meeting because I used the word archaic in a memo. And I happened to walk in on it because it wasn't like in his office. It was in my office because I shared an office with. But they were having a whole meeting about and I think maybe he had to look the word up or something like that. But like, they asked me to describe the way they asked me to do research on the way that they do their radio broadcasts, and I did. And I said, based on my research, the way we do it is archaic.
Yeah.
And like, but he didn't have to call it archaic. It was like a whole thing, right? And so this is like an example of where I'm expressing a thought that I think is innocuous, right? Like, I'm not trying to insult anybody. Like, the word means what it means,
right?
And I was just using that word to describe, but it was like a whole thing. And this kind of thing used to happen to me constantly, where like, I'm just having what I think is a normal conversation on his face, and then everybody walks away like, oh, he's different, he's weird, like, what's he trying to say? Like, just there'll be a whole subtext that I didn't get, and so yeah. Go ahead.
So when you walked in, so what happened?
Well, the people who were talking about it, they both were like, so why did you use this word? Why was that? And it was just like a whole thing. Like, it wasn't, and I was like, wait, which? Because I didn't even remember that I used the word, because old wouldn't have been sufficient in my mind, because to say like we do it in the old way,
right?
Right. I could have said outdated, perhaps. I don't know, but who knows?
Did they understand what it meant?
I think that they looked it up.
Okay.
But the problem is that they couldn't have a straight conversation with me about it. Like, it wasn't like like if I would have asked, did you know what it meant? That would have made it worse. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Especially if people were feeling like insecure about their intelligence or whatever,
Right.
But so yeah, it was just the whole thing, and I found that if my art is an extension of my truest self, and my truest self is being confined and sort of beat down by people's insecurities and fears, then I have to remove myself out of the environment so that I can be my fullest self and then create the art that is meaningful to me.
Right.
And so that was, kind of my journey. You look like you're having thoughts about it. Yeah? No?
Nope.
All right. So for you in Texas,
yes,
growing up there, and obviously you've traveled with your work and you've gone to school in different places and stuff like that. Was it a journey for you to be able to find your most authentic voice in your art?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say finding my authentic voice through the material I was working with, or the materials I was working with.
Okay.
Because of I've got, the group of peers I have in terms of artists that I know of my generation are just amazing artists, and I didn't know where I fit into that, or what niche I had in that, or if I had one at all. And I'm at a point now where I'm like, if I'm in my own lane, I'm in my own lane, and I'm much more at peace with it.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it was like, someone's organizing a group show of young Black artists, and they invite certain artists, or they select certain artists, and sometimes I'd be left out of that, and I would take it personally. But my work really just didn't fit in with the aesthetic of what the show they were putting together, or the concept they were working through, or
right.
Yeah.
Huh.
And yeah, I've always felt like the odd woman out here and there, but now I'm at a point where it's just like, I'm in my own lane.
Nice.
Yeah.
We are here. We're doing it.
Absolutely.
All right. So switch gears. I like to bring this up a lot. Most artists in their process deal with fear. And so I want to ask what it's like when it comes up, and how do you find your way through it in order to complete things?
I have to either drown out or try to ignore that side of myself that second guesses that says that, oh, maybe this isn't good enough, or it's not right, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this or that, or if I'm putting or if I have an idea and I'm worried that it won't be understood or accepted or appreciated. And I guess it's the fear of not making something good or powerful or something that people can connect with or would enjoy or appreciate. It's like, yeah, I mean, is it the fear of acceptance? I hate to say that. When I say that, I'm not saying that I'm wanting to assimilate or be, I want you to accept me. But the fear of success, the success of doing something creatively and having it come out right or having it come out successfully. The fear of that kind of success, the fear of failure.
Right.
Failure as a visual artist, failure within my career, failure within myself. It's the fear of failure visually. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on some level, art is essentially presenting a piece of our soul to the world.
Yeah.
So like
absolutely.
However they react to it is going to be, like it's a tender thing, right? So it can't affect us.
It's our baby. We're putting it out. We're putting it out there in the world. We're putting our baby out there in the world.
So your way of moving through it is just
my way of moving through it is stopping myself from procrastinating, from accomplishing it or following through with an idea or a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more I have this conversation with people, like people have all kinds of ways. Some people talk to other artists' friends. Some artists just accept that it's part of the process of creating art. And when you put it in that context, it kind of has a little less bite to it.
That's well said. Yeah, it's the process.
Yeah, so it's always good to hear, what different people's perspective is about it. What are you working on these days?
These days, I am working on projects that are public projects that are whether it be a permanent work of art or if it's something that I'm creating that's temporary and also larger scale. But I'm working on work that's public based, that's outdoors. I'm working on taking my work from it's sort of protected because the materials I work with, one of which is I work with raw cotton, burlap, things that if I put these things outside or present them outside the way I present them indoors.
Right. They won't stand up.
Right. Will it stand up? Will it hold up?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on right now. And I have a project that I'm excited about in Houston, Texas that I'm working on. I'm part of a group show experience that's going to be outdoors in the woods. And I'm creating an installation that's an ephemeral installation that's temporary. But it's going to be designed I'm going to allow it to deteriorate. I'm going to allow it to weather to see what will happen.
That sounds cool.
And the people curating the show or organizing the show understand that, and it's something that they invite. So we'll see how it goes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so Kaneem, if people want to follow your stuff online, kind of keep track of what you're doing, where are the places? Thankfully, because I have I'm working with a gallery in Houston currently, Nicole Longnecker Gallery, an unusual name, but Longnecker Longnecker Gallery. Two amazing people I'm working with, two gallerists I'm working with in Houston, and and most importantly, I mentioned that because I have my website it is a work in progress, but it is up. Okay.
I'd love for I invite people to check it out. It is www.kaneemsmithart.com. So that's Kan, like Nancy, EEM, like mailbox, Smith, all together, Smith Art, KaneemSmithArt.com. That's my website.
Cool.
And I more than welcome people to check that out.
Right on. All right, so I usually try to wrap up by asking people what's their geeky pleasure. So, like, what kind of art have you been consuming, books, movies, posts, whatever it is, that is sort of giving you life?
I guess what's giving me life right now is I'm excited. I'm excited about the things I'm working on within my studio practice. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited about the music that I'm listening to that I enjoy, that helps birth these ideas, these concepts of mine. I really, I like a lot of different artists. I like an eclectic mix of music, but I'm really loving, like, for example, one artist I really love, Robert Glasper. He's one of my favorite artists. He's just amazing. Him and Brad Meldau and I guess I'm going to say Miles Davis.
Right.
And I know that sounds crazy as a woman saying I love Miles Davis, but I got that kind of from my father. Huh. And not because of Miles Davis, the man who he was, because in his relationships and that sort of thing, but as a musician, as a musical genius, it's like my dad, it's like the music, I guess I'm geeked out by the music my father enjoys or always enjoyed and would play at home or in a studio space in his practice, that I really didn't take much accounting to, or really didn't allow it to absorb within myself growing up. But I appreciate it now so many years later. Right. Because now it's like I get it now.
Yeah, and it also gets to be a way you get to connect and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you get new dimensions to your relationship. One of my homeboys that I grew up with, I was always trying to get him into, like, I would read a book and try to pass it to him. He would never read it. Like, never.
Oh,
now, at this age, he started listening to audiobooks, and he's just, like, consuming them. He's like, yo. And so I'm, like, giving him books, and he's just, like, knocking them out. And he's like, yo, great. Why didn't you tell me all this stuff was in books, man? You know?
Well, you tried to.
Right.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's dope,
awesome.
because we've been friends for like 3 decades, and now we have a new dimension to our friendship where we can discuss these books, you know?
I love that.
So that's really dope.
Yes.
Anyway, Kaneem, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It was a wonderful conversation.
It was wonderful talking with you as well. It was an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed it very much.
Right on. Special thank you to today's guest, Kaneem Smith. Thanks to our listeners. Please be sure to subscribe to How Art is Born wherever you get your podcast for more episodes. And if you can, leave a review. It really helps us out.